On a chilly November evening in a sprawling urban suburb, Officer Daniel Mercer patrolled the rain-slicked streets in his aging cruiser. The city was a mosaic of neon reflections on puddles, and the low hum of distant traffic mingled with the gentle patter of rain. Mercer, a veteran officer with years of service etched into the lines of his face, believed in upholding the law, even when it meant confronting the everyday anomalies of a system he both respected and resented. Tonight, routine duty was about to morph into something that would challenge his every assumption. As Mercer cruised along a deserted boulevard, his trained eyes caught sight of a dark sedan idling near a set of flickering streetlights. The car's taillights glowed faintly, and although nothing appeared overtly wrong, something in its deliberate stillness tugged at Mercer's instincts. Over the years, his gut had learned to trust those subtle cues, even if they sometimes led him astray. He flicked on his patrol lights, and the soft siren cut through the quiet night as the sedan pulled over with measured precision. Mercer parked his cruiser a few car lengths behind the vehicle and approached on foot. The rain fell steadily, cloaking the scene in a muted silver sheen. He knocked firmly on the driver's window, which rolled down slowly to reveal a middle-aged African-American man with a calm, dignified expression. The man's eyes were steady and unflinching, an unsettling contrast to the nervous twitch Mercer expected to see. "Good evening," Mercer said, his tone measured yet carrying an undercurrent of authority. "License, registration, and proof of insurance, please." The man, who introduced himself as Darnell Hayes, retrieved the requested documents with a quiet precision. His movements were deliberate and unhurried, as though he had rehearsed this encounter in advance. Mercer's eyes flicked over the papers, noting nothing out of the ordinary except the unusual calm in Hayes's demeanor. "Do you know why I stopped you tonight?" Mercer asked, his gaze narrowing slightly as he searched Hayes's face for any sign of hesitation. Hayes met his stare steadily. "I presume it's because of the taillights. They don't seem to be working as they should," he replied, his voice smooth and even. Mercer nodded curtly. "That's correct. Driving without properly functioning lights is a violation of safety regulations." Yet, beneath the routine explanation, Mercer's mind churned with an undercurrent of discontent. He had been reprimanded before for not being assertive enough, for letting suspects slip away with polite defiance. Tonight, he was determined to maintain control at any cost. As the minutes ticked by under the muted glow of streetlights, the rain seemed to intensify, each droplet echoing the silent rhythm of the city's heartbeat. Mercer leaned in closer, his voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "Where are you headed, Mr. Hayes?" Hayes' response was unhurried, deliberate. "I'm on my way home, to a quiet neighborhood on the east side." His tone was neutral, yet there was an unmistakable firmness behind his words that hinted at deeper layers. Mercer's gaze lingered on Hayes, studying every micro-expression, every subtle shift in posture. In his years on the force, he had learned that composure often masked hidden motives, and tonight, his instincts screamed that Hayes was not merely an ordinary motorist with a broken light. As the officer's mind raced with questions he dared not ask aloud, the moments stretched on, filled with a tension that seemed to thicken the very air around them. Reluctantly, Mercer stepped back to his cruiser, leaving Hayes seated in his vehicle. The encounter, though seemingly trivial, had already stirred something deep within him, a mixture of professional pride and a simmering need to assert dominance. Unbeknownst to Mercer, this simple stop would soon evolve into a confrontation that would shatter his preconceived notions of authority and justice. In the following moments, as the rain drummed steadily on the pavement, the night transformed into a stage for a power struggle neither man had anticipated. Mercer returned to the set-in with a deliberate stride, his eyes fixed on Hayes. The routine check was rapidly spiraling into an arena where pride and prejudice intermingled dangerously. "Step out of the vehicle," Mercer ordered abruptly, his voice carrying a force that bordered on imperious. Hayes' expression remained unaltered, a slight raise of his brow, a calm that belied the tension mounting in the humid air. "May I ask why?" Hayes replied, his tone both respectful and subtly challenging. There was no tremor of fear in his voice. Instead, it resonated with an unspoken assurance that unsettled Mercer further. "Because you're not cooperating," Mercer snapped, his hand inching toward the cuff compartment at his side. "I need to see your identification again." Hayes' eyes held Mercer steady, his posture unwavering. "Officer, I have already provided my documents. I see no reason for further delay," he said, his voice quiet yet resonant with a controlled authority that Mercer found increasingly irksome. Frustration simmered within Mercer, a culmination of years of feeling that his authority was both challenged and taken for granted by those he deemed unworthy. In a rash decision born of hubris, he produced his handcuffs with a swift motion. "I'm placing you under arrest for failing to comply," he declared, his tone cold and final. The words hung in the rain-soaked air as Hayes' calm facade deepened. "Arrest me?" Hayes inquired, a note of incredulity punctuating his calm tone. "On what grounds, officer?" Mercer's face flushed with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. "You're making this difficult for me." "I have my orders," he retorted, reaching forward to seize Hayes' arm. The sudden contact was both forceful and invasive, a stark assertion of control that Hayes neither resisted nor recoiled from, only maintained his unyielding gaze. "Release my arm, please," Hayes said evenly, though the firmness in his tone carried a subtle warning. "You have no grounds for such an action." His words, measured and precise, cut through Mercer's resolve like a scalpel. In that charged moment, as the downpour masked the whispered exchanges between man and law, Mercer's internal conflict erupted. His mind raced with memories of similar encounters, each one reinforcing a belief that his badge granted him unparalleled authority. Yet, deep down, a disquieting voice reminded him that pride could be his downfall. Ignoring the internal turmoil, Mercer pressed on, his voice rising with a mix of indignation and desperation. "Do you think you're above the law?" "I'm here to enforce it," he shouted, the cadence of his words betraying the intensity of his anger. Hayes' response was a measured silence that seemed to speak volumes. As Mercer fumbled with the cuffs, a sudden interruption shattered the escalating tension. A crackle over his radio, followed by a voice that pierced the charged atmosphere. "Officer Mercer, confirm the suspect's identity," the dispatcher demanded, the tone laced with an authority that Mercer knew all too well. For a fleeting second, Mercer's confidence wavered. As he hesitated, Hayes' eyes softened into something akin to pity, or perhaps it was resolve. "My name is Darnell Hayes," he stated, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "And I assure you, I am in full compliance." Mercer's grip on Hayes' arm faltered slightly, his mind scrambling to reconcile the situation. His internal monologue was a cacophony of doubt, fueled by the awareness that his actions were teetering on the edge of legality. The rain seemed to intensify as if nature itself were urging him to reconsider. Yet before Mercer could process the moment further, Hayes spoke again, his tone low and imbued with an unexpected authority. "Officer Mercer, please look at your body cam. I'm sure it captured every moment of this encounter." His words were calm, yet they resonated with a clarity that pierced Mercer's burgeoning panic. In that instant, Mercer's internal armor cracked. A seed of uncertainty sprouted as Hayes' calm retort clashed with his mounting anger. The rain, the flashing red and blue lights, and the solemn hush of the night bore witness to a confrontation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his control. Mercer's mind, clouded by both the weight of his responsibilities and the blinding pride that had defined his career, began to falter under the pressure of Hayes' unwavering presence. The street, now a stage for the dramatic interplay of power and accountability, seemed to hold its breath as the confrontation reached its peak. Mercer's heart pounded in his chest as Hayes' words echoed in his mind, a reminder that every action, every abuse of power, was recorded not only by technology, but by the unyielding hand of justice. In a measured yet piercing tone, Hayes continued, "Officer Mercer, how many times have you overstepped your bounds? How many lives have been affected by a moment of unchecked authority?" The question, simple in its construction, carried the weight of countless injustices, a mirror held up to Mercer's soul. For the first time that night, Mercer's facade of unassailable authority began to crumble. His voice, once booming with certainty, now trembled as he attempted to formulate a defense. I was only doing my duty," he stuttered, the words falling flat in the rain-soaked silence. Hayes' eyes glinted with a mix of resolve and quiet indignation. With deliberate calm, he reached beneath his jacket and produced a small silver badge, one that bore the unmistakable emblem of the Internal Investigations Division. "I am not merely a motorist, Officer Mercer. I am the head of internal investigations for this precinct," he declared, his tone both measured and imbued with an authority that left no room for doubt. The revelation hit Mercer like a physical blow. His face drained of color as the full magnitude of his error sank in. The man he had so rashly restrained was not only fully compliant, but held a position of oversight and power, a position that could and would hold him accountable for every unjustified act. In that instant, Mercer realized that the very badge he had worn with pride was now a symbol of his impending downfall. You can't be serious," Mercer managed, his voice cracking as panic replaced his earlier arrogance. His hand, still hovering uncertainly over Hayes' arm, dropped to his side in a gesture of feeble surrender. The cool night air did nothing to calm the storm raging within him. Hayes stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "I am serious, Officer Mercer. Your actions tonight have crossed a line that law and order itself will not tolerate." His gaze was unyielding as he continued. "Where is your body cam recording? Have you even turned it on, or was that just another excuse to hide your misconduct?" Mercer's mind reeled as the sound of approaching footsteps signaled the arrival of additional officers. A fellow officer, Sergeant Alicia Monroe, emerged from a nearby cruiser with a measured urgency. Her eyes quickly took in the scene. The rain, the struggling officer, and the calm, imposing figure of Hayes, and her face hardened with the knowledge of what was unfolding. "Officer Mercer," she said firmly, "we need to review your body cam footage immediately." Her tone brooked no argument, and in that moment, Mercer realized that his authority was not only under scrutiny, but already in jeopardy. In the midst of the chaos, Hayes' calm remained unbroken. He met Mercer's eyes with a steady, almost sorrowful look, a look that conveyed both disappointment and a final chance for the officer to understand the gravity of his actions. "A badge is not a shield against accountability," Hayes intoned softly. "It is a symbol of the responsibility you bear, a responsibility you have now clearly failed to uphold." Mercer's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know who you were." The admission, fraught with regret, did little to stem the tide of consequences already set in motion. Sergeant Monroe's presence, along with the hum of distant radios and the unrelenting patter of rain, marked the beginning of the end for Mercer's night, and, likely, his career. As he was escorted toward a waiting squad car, the realization that every moment of his misjudgment was now on record became inescapable. With a final, measured calm, Hayes spoke once more, his voice echoing in the cold, damp air. "Today you learned a hard lesson. Remember this moment, Officer Mercer, for it is a reminder that unchecked authority will always be held to account. Your badge does not make you invincible, it makes you responsible." As Mercer's figure receded into the darkness, the rain continued its ceaseless descent, washing away the traces of a once proud officer's arrogance. In the gathering silence that followed, the truth stood stark and undeniable. Justice had been served, and the price of abuse of power was steep. The incident would ripple through the department, a catalyst for reform, an enduring reminder that in the eyes of the law, no one was above accountability. And as the night swallowed the remnants of the confrontation, a final thought lingered in the damp air. A shattered badge is the first step toward rebuilding a trust that can only be earned through humility, respect, and unwavering accountability.